While today the internet feels claustrophobic, where you have to sift through ads and battle algorithms to find what you're looking for, it wasn't always this way. There used to be numerous gaming forums, but they've all died out over time. Thankfully, I got to experience the tail end of this era, which I mainly did through Minecraft forums. And those experiences helped shape the way that I use the internet today.
Lately, the idea of the death and rebirth of social media has been in my mind with the slow descent of Twitter, and all of the brand new forms of social media that everyone has experimented with since then. Every few years, there's always some big swap in how people interact with social media. For a long time, people used AOL chat rooms and message boards, then video game forums sprung up, and then somewhere along the way, vanished, leading us to where we are now. Video games are an inherently social medium. In the 80s, you were swapping secrets that you discovered in your favorite games, and nowadays, people are consistently using social media to spread footage of their favorite games. In their prime, video game forums were at the forefront of video game discussion. If you wanted to find a group of like-minded people to discuss your favorite niche game with, there was probably a forum for it. If there wasn't a forum, you could post a thread on NeoGAF, and 1 billion people who also played that game would be summoned. Need to get a piece of gaming news? You can hop on a forum and probably find a 100-page long thread of people discussing it and telling you why your opinion on that news is actually wrong. If you're getting into video game modding, you're almost guaranteed to be a user of video game forums, because that's where you could find modding tools and share your mods. The golden age of forums was a time where you could easily find a hub of people to bond with. However, like I mentioned earlier, the means through which we talk about video games have drastically changed over the past few decades. Nowadays, forums are kind of a drop in the gigantic ocean of video game discussion. So, what happened? Are the remaining forums just fragments of a long-forgotten era, or is there still a value in internet forums? Well, it's complicated. Before we can even talk about the future of forums, we need to establish the past.
To address the elephant in the room, while forums were popular, this was a time of chat rooms, not forums. The internet was dominated by places like AOL, and that's an important distinction to make. Forums much more of a hardcore gamer space than a casual place.
When I think of 90s video game forums, the first one that comes to mind is Doom World. Doom World was created in 1998 and served as a hub of sorts for the Doom community. In my eyes, Doom World embodies the ideal version of the fandom-specific website from this era. It has a database of information and a forum for fans. To say Doom World did a lot for the Doom community would be an understatement. The amount of Doom history preserved on this website is staggering. This place is essentially the spot to go to if you're looking for any information on the Doom franchise, but most importantly, it's a way to get your finger on the pulse of the Doom fanbase. The beauty of fan forums like Doom World is that there is something so incredibly pure about seeing a group of people come together to celebrate media that they love, and Doom World embodies this. Even now, you can find fans discussing every single game and spotlighting fan creations. In fact, I would argue that this is actually the single most important thing about fan communities like Doom World. It acts as a central hub for everyone to show off their fan creations, and a franchise like Doom is one that has always lived off of its modding scene. Another one of my favorite examples of a fandom-specific forum is Starmen.net. The Mother fanbase has always been extremely passionate about spreading their love of the franchise, and Starmen.net was the perfect hub for Mother in the late 90s and 2000s. Even now it has a small but active user base. There's something extraordinarily endearing to me about Starmen.net. It's not the most advanced website, and the Mother series is for all intents and purposes finished, but the fanbase is still thriving. People gather on this little hub to discuss this one niche franchise that means the world to them, and to pull together their knowledge to create the ultimate destination for learning about Mother.
I'm focusing on fan-specific forums first, because I think they illustrate what makes forums so beautiful. They're these humble little websites that create out of a pure passion for these series, and they're amazing resources for fans. I mean, you can get guides and mods and all these little things. They're a place of pure passion, and that's what I adore about them. However, video game forums weren't limited to just tiny little pockets of fan bases. The 90s and 2000s actually gave us many different general video game forums. In the interest of avoiding repetition, I'm actually just going to focus on two of them: GameFAQs and NeoGAF.
GameFAQs is the one that I have the most familiarity with because, like many people, I've used it whenever I get stuck in a video game. If you can't figure out anything in a game, odds are GameFAQs has the solution. I think that is honestly the most important contribution that GameFAQs has brought to the internet. Earlier I mentioned how video games are an extremely social medium because of things like swapping secrets with friends, and GameFAQs carries that spirit on in the online era. There exist two main splits for finding information: questions and guides. Both of them are frequently used by people even in 2024, meaning that if your question has already been asked, there's an answer on GameFAQs, and if it hasn't been asked yet, they'll get an answer quickly. It's such a marvel in sharing video game secrets, and I find myself consulting GameFAQs a good amount. GameFAQs also contains forums split into franchises, platforms and general posting, but I definitely have less familiarity with these, and for the sake of this video, I don't think that there is much that I need to say about them. The main point to take away from all this is that GameFAQs kinda rocks. I'd go as far as to call it one of the most important sites ever created in gaming. Without the community of GameFAQs, so much video game knowledge wouldn't be as easily accessible as it is now. There are thousands of publicly available, well-written guides for decades of video games. Everything I've talked about so far is about the idea of preserving knowledge in some form, but let's be real, that only makes up a subsection of internet usage. Most internet forum users aren't historians preserving knowledge. Instead, they're just casually talking about the latest news in games. There's a billion forums like that, but the most culturally significant is by far NeoGAF. Even if you didn't use it, you likely heard of NeoGAF if you were deep into online video game discussion in the 2000s to 2010s. It was in a way the quote-unquote town square of online discussion when it came to the hardcore gaming audience. You could find both players and developers chilling out and discussing things. Sometimes this took a humorous turn with mishaps, like the vice president of Microsoft's global marketing telling a user that they had no worth to society. Back to the town square metaphor though. While town squares are awesome because anyone can say anything, they're also ugly for that same reason. NeoGAF had a history of brutal feedback, with the developer of the game Rhyme mentioning how NeoGAF made him cry for 2 days. Hey Kimby, people can't say whatever they want, it has moderators. Well, there were indeed moderators, which was actually kind of a hot button topic. Some users liked the moderation, others thought that they were biased and enforced only their own viewpoint, but plenty of people were also just apathetic. However, even if there were a lot of bad aspects to NeoGAF, it did give a bridge between gamers and developers to discuss things. Not just in the sense of getting insight into games, but also allowing developers to be a part of the discussion of video games. Was there still a level of discretion needed? Of course. I mean, a developer couldn't go on and say anything, because they have a job in the industry, and dropping rancid garbage online has consequences, but they could at least casually talk about games. But in the background, something much worse than controversial gaming takes and biased moderation was brewing. First, 2014, the website Slate accused NeoGAF of hosting pedophile discussions and fostering a culture of sexism that went all the way up to the owner, Tyler Malka. Upon taking a quick glance at a single thread on dominant gender gestures, it's easy to see what the writer meant. The thread is filled with a lot of weird quotes. Most importantly, cites Malka saying how he grabbed a random woman's butt. The whole thing left a really foul taste in my mouth, and while yes, it was the early 2010s and we have come a long way since then, this type of thread shows the exact culture that led to NeoGAF's downfall. This type of attitude made parts of NeoGAF closer to a gross college fraternity party rather than a place for people to discuss video games. In 2017, as part of the Me Too movement, accusations came out that Tyler Malka had sexually harassed a woman. Immediately, NeoGAF began to explode, leading to a huge chunk of users jumping ship and a new website being formed, ResetEra.
Video game forums have disappeared into the ether. While they still exist, they're not necessarily a prominent part of video game discussion anymore. There's many reasons for this, but I put a lot of the blame on NeoGAF's downfall. After the accusations came out, it split the user base, and a lot of the users jumped onto ResetEra, but some of them also stayed behind on NeoGAF. This divide kind of created this issue where neither site is super popular, because splitting a niche just makes it more niche.
Taking a quick glance at modern NeoGAF illustrates my point. Post Malka getting accused of being a sexual predator, NeoGAF implemented a strict no politics policy. There is definitely a weird enforcement of that policy in play, but you can still discuss political topics like new laws being passed in the United States. There's an unsettling vibe when clicking on the off-topic section of the forum, where you'll be reminded of the whole no politics thing, but see that plenty of the popular topics are political, so clearly some of it gets the pass. So what does no politics actually mean then? Well, it feels heavily coded to mean do not discuss sexual harassment, especially in the context of the allegations against the owner. Pretty please. I say this because the rule didn't actually exist until the accusations came out. It is very suspicious to be pro-political discussion until the owner is accused of being a harasser. The site still pushes itself as progressive in areas, but now that the allegations are out there, there's this attempt to almost shove the cat back in the bag by silencing certain uncomfortable topics. As a whole, it gives NeoGAF this bad stench when I look at it. So, what even makes NeoGAF worth keeping around anymore? The site has this massive legacy, but it's tainted by the fact that it continues to be run by someone who has said many disgusting quotes, and is clearly trying to sweep it under the rug to a degree, where he'll sometimes just throw his hands up and go, well, if you want to be mad about it, go for it. So much the old NeoGAF moved to ResetEra, which makes the current NeoGAF feel like a separate place built off of its legacy. By comparison, I think ResetEra is a much healthier place. I can't call myself a ResetEra user, nor will I ever be since I don't use social media that much, but I can see a lot of the value in it. Keep keeps a lot of the good parts of gaming forums, but most importantly, it doesn't have a tolerance for the behavior that caused NeoGAF to crumble. And that's not to say that every person who uses it is a bastion of progressiveness, or even that every person who is progressive is a good person necessarily. But there's a stark contrast between modern NeoGAF and ResetEra's unabashed embrace of queer people and other minorities, as well as the firm anti-sexual harassment stance it takes. Realistically, being anti-sexual harassment should be the minimum. I'm not going to celebrate that as a milestone for society, but especially considering where internet gamer culture used to be, and honestly, even where it is now, having threads for people to call out revolting workplaces or discussing female character designs is something worth noting. Looking at modern ResetEra, while it's not a place that I can call my home, I honestly have come to understand the appeal a bit more. I have my qualms with it, but there's a strong appeal here. Social media is extremely fragmented these days, and ResetEra feels like a counter to that. Its small size gives it a tighter community. I've seen so many endearing posts of members caring for each other's well-being. Feels like a modern approach to classic video game forums. It has threads for discussing gaming news or your playthroughs of games, plus hangout zones for people to bond over multiplayer games. On the topic of gaming news, the most prominent aspect of ResetEra is for sure how it acts as a hub for video game journalists and leakers. For better and for worse, ResetEra is where people go to post a bunch of rumors, and there is usually some baseline level of credibility required for people to spread them. Speaking personally, I have used ResetEra to find gaming news, because some of the threads that people create are put together beautifully. ResetEra has plenty of faults, and we can for sure debate them. Plenty of the issues that I outlined in the NeoGAF section still exist, minus the sexism for the most part. Moderation on ResetEra has led to a lot of sub-communities splintering off from it. There's weird borderline right-wing troll places meant to own the ResetEra libs, but also websites like Famiboards and Xbox Era, which split off from the main site to give those communities a healthier place to thrive. Another key issue on ResetEra is something that I haven't touched on in this video, but it's the idea of the enthusiast gamer internet bubble. In short, this concept states that enthusiast gaming circles such as ResetEra often create a bubble of sorts that doesn't quite represent the broader gaming landscape. Niche titles such as Banjo-Kazooie or Mega Man gain more of a spotlight in these spaces than some of the most popular games in the market, like Apex Legends. Realistically, video games are such a wide medium that it is impossible for one space to capture every corner of the market. It does lead to some misinformed takes and threads, but I don't know how much of that is the result of ignorance. More than anything, it's because enthusiast sites like ResetEra are a sliver of a much larger pie, and the odds of getting a perfect slice of pie are microscopic. However, even with all the faults that I've outlined, ResetEra is distinctly human, which is what allows for it to survive. Its sense of community creates strong bonds that provide it with a pulse that keeps it alive, even in an era that has shifted away from internet forums. At the end of the day, the internet is the space where we all get together to scream into a void, and occasionally respond to the screams of others. Internet forums feel like the opposite of that to me. They are inherently tied to the idea of being connected and sharing conversations with others. That doesn't mean that they always give way to the most sophisticated of conversations. I mean, the concept of drive-by posting is a thing after all, but they certainly foster a sense of community. If Twitter is a place where you just scream out your gaming takes and share clips, forums are important because they give a platform for people to come together to actually discuss those things. However, forums aren't the only place for people to sit in a circle and discuss video games anymore. Something new has started to replace forums. Earlier in this video, I claimed that forums are similar to town squares, and the major chunk of what makes Discord so appealing is that it keeps the town square spirit, except now it's a gated community. The barrier for internet forums was making an account, but with Discords, you also need to get invited to them. There exists plenty of public Discords, but they're still locked behind the application itself. You need to be signed into Discord to view these spaces, meaning that if Discord disappears, so do these spaces. While the threat of forums disappearing always exists, and realistically, plenty of forums already have or will disappear in the future, Discord is this borderline decentralized network of little spaces that are near impossible to archive. If a server just vanishes one day, there's no wayback machine that we can use to remember it, and all of it is gone to the abyss of time. In the first major section of this video, I placed so much emphasis on how fruitful looking at forums can be for learning about video games. They act as Wikipedias for niche series and can preserve obscure bits of information like game walkthroughs and modding tools. Nowadays, Discords have started to replace that, which feels a little dire. There's a potential for a lot of these things to disappear without a trace in seconds, with no way to ever recover them. Speaking of Discord, there is a forums feature, however, it sucks. I think the idea was to bring back some of the best aspects of forums, such as individual threads for specific topics, but in execution, it's a mess. Discord in general is a very bloated piece of software. It now has both threads and forums which serve similar purposes, but are executed slightly differently. Plus, Discord servers are still private, so it doesn't really fix servers being gated communities that can easily vanish. In recent years, dead internet theory has gained a lot of prevalence. At its core, Dead Internet Theory believes that the internet has been flooded with copious amounts of AI-generated content. While the original theory was extremely out there, pitching the idea that the internet was actually a government-controlled scheme, the overarching concept, the internet being fake, is very observable. If you scroll through the replies to a Twitter post, you notice numerous accounts spewing out the same garbage, such as pussy in bio, or generic replies meant to farm likes. This plague has become extremely far-reaching, affecting much more than social media. There's so many scam products and pieces of fake news out there that all result from these content farms that seek to mold the internet as a place for profit, not people. Speaking of the internet being a place for profit over people, the homogenization of the internet. A lot of the early forums were small, grassroots operations. While some of them did later grow in size to become companies, they'll pale in comparison to what now dominates the internet. Modern social media has usurped forums. We all know how much data these platforms collect and sell. The aesthetic of social media websites is extremely drab, with these websites often feeling more like cardboard cutouts than actual places. The modern internet can feel like a hellscape at times. Ads are constantly shoved in your face, your data is sold for profit. Once you wade through all that to get what you're looking for, there's a high likelihood that whatever you're consuming is actually just AI slop. However, I don't think that we're in a doomsday scenario for the internet. Yes, the internet is dying, but people are trying to reverse that. There's a web revivalism movement that is currently ongoing, and it's an attempt to take back the internet from the big corporations that have poisoned the well. One of the main goals of web revivalism is to bring back a fun, more human internet, rather than an internet filled with advertising and AI content. It's a very punk movement, promoting anti-corporation ideas and, more importantly, an openness that we've lost. Web revivalism has taken many forms, such as small independent websites, including NeoCities. Web revivalism isn't a replacement for forums, but at the very least keeps that spirit of openness and community that defined them. It's unlikely that we'll ever return to the internet of the past, but we can work towards a cleaner, more ethical internet built on human interaction, not profit. Up to this point, I have taken a pretty negative tone on the modern internet, but it's not a complete dump. The spirit of the old internet lives on in many ways. While I'm not Reddit's biggest fan, it does keep some of what made forums special. There's various communities that range from popular interest to underground ones. I also sometimes use Reddit posts when I look up a question on Google and need a quick answer. Is Reddit run by a massive corporation polluting the internet? Absolutely, but it does at least spread some of the forum spirit to an audience much bigger than any gaming forum has ever had. Like, one time my dad asked me about Reddit, and that was the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. In terms of small, more humble efforts, there's a lot of fan sites that are dedicated to preserving knowledge in the same way as websites like starman.net did. Mother Forever is for sure the most significant one, with it having gallons of information on the Mother franchise, but also being a place that uplifts new fan content. Video game modding has moved on to its own little world too, with sites such as Nexus Mods and ModDB acting as a central hub for modding. GitHub is a new home for video game modding, and it also makes documenting emulators extremely manageable. Web revivalism is an ongoing project, and while we can't ever fully remove the stain that these corporations have left on the internet, I don't think the internet will truly die. There are always going to be people who seek to carry the torch of a more human internet, one where we unite out of a mutual adoration for topics, such as video games. The internet is a series of revolving doors, and just because one door is closed, doesn't mean that every other door is closed too.
Video game forums have, for the most part, faded into obscurity, but their impact can never be overstated. At the start of the video, I called video games an inherently social medium, and that's something that I really stand by. Video game forums were like a megaphone. You could scream about your favorite things, and then other people would respond. It put sharing your niche topics as something to do rather than to keep to yourself. In a way, I see it similar to something like video essays, where at least for me, video essays are all about sharing things I'm passionate about and screaming to them with an audience of people who then hopefully respond. Forums imbued the internet with a heartfelt sense of passion that it can never be stripped of.
Miss you, bud. You know, you left a good one. It was really, you're really something special. Oh, hey, I didn't think I'd see you at a funeral again. What's going on?
I didn't expect to be here either, dude.
Oh, yeah. Why are you reaching? Oh, yeah. Hey, can I borrow one of those really quick?
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
Thanks.
First it was Mega Man, and now it's the Game Force. I just wanted to talk about Halo. I just wanted to talk about Master Chief debate.
What are you talking about? This is for gaming forums. Like, it's all right. Xbox era exists. It's like, it's all right. Like,
The goats are gone. Mega Man is gone.
This is just a really weird reference to an old Kimby. Like, they're not actually dead. This is just a bit.
And now Fuse Fall's dead. Oh no!
Fuse Fall was always dead. Fuse Knight is dead. They're all dead. Wake up.
Fuse Knight.
It is
why?
Kimby era. It is Kimby era.
Fuse.
But don't worry.
God.
Fuse Knight will be back in the next video.
Oh, this is worse! Oh! I love reviving corpses for my channel. My name's Kimby, signing out. See ya.